NBA season previews. I'm Matt Sampson, joining once again. Todd Lewis, thanks for coming in, man.
Alright.
We're going to be looking at the Brooklyn Nets today, but quickly we've got to give a shout out to Sporties at the Arca Bar. They've been nice enough to let us come in and film every morning, so check out their Facebook, it's going to be in the description below. And if you're in Adelaide, want to grab a meal, watch some sport, it's all up on the big screens. It's great down here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awesome. I've been here a few times to watch soccer and all of that, and yeah, it's a pretty good atmosphere as well. Plenty of people get down here, so definitely get down here and watch your basketball or any sport.
That's it, get around it. But we've got more pressing matters right now to talk about, and that is the Brooklyn Nets, who are, I've got them slotted in for, I think, let me double check, I've had a mental blank, 18th in the league, which is the first playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, I think, as well. They're 8th overall, so the Nets just squeaking into the top 8 there.
Yeah, well, that's probably fair. Like, last year, everyone was like, oh, the Brooklyn Nets, they're going to be top of the East. This is so unfair. Neck minute. No good. So I think, yeah, they've lost Paul Pierce now. They've spent so much money to bring this team together. It's now or never, pretty much. And yeah, I just can't see them doing anything with this squad.
Yeah, you look at what they did last season, and they went 44-38, which is pretty respectable. In the Eastern Conference, with the roster they had, probably wanted to see them do a bit more.
Yeah.
I mean, before the start of the year, everyone was talking titles, weren't they?
Yeah, that's it.
They brought in KG, they brought in Paul Pierce. There's real big names. Jason Terry, who, what's happened to his career? He's just disappeared off of the map. And people had title aspirations, and they only finished 6th in the East, which, is not really that astounding. And, 21st overall in offense, so bottom third of the league, but their defense was 11th, which is pretty good, which is sort of topsy-turvy for what you thought they would have been at the beginning of the year. The strength we've got written there is Mikhail Prokhorov's pockets, because they brought in all those players. Their total payroll with the luxury tax included, I think, came up to about 182 million, which the salary cap is only roughly around that 60 million.
Yeah.
So they almost paid triple the amount you're supposed to for this roster. So him being able to bankroll that was huge, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And I think I saw something like that's 100 million more than what Miami spent.
Yeah.
And Miami went on to win the title and obviously put that great team together. And this team's basically only a bunch of veterans put together with obviously Deron, and then, I don't know why they spent all that money. They should be looking to go down maybe the youth path after this era ends, because if they don't prove anything this year, they got to look at taking another route to try and become a great team in the East. Yeah,
well, the weakness we've got there is kind of a bit of an oxymoron, but their strength was all the money they spent, but the weakness is all the money they've spent has really handcuffed them to this roster, because like you said, the Spurs, their team was like, they were under the salary cap, and they went on to just absolutely smash it and steamroll everyone on the way to like their 5th title in 16 years. And this team has just absolutely spent money out of their ass, and just it's not gone anywhere. They've sent all of their picks, have either gone to Atlanta in the Joe Johnson trade, or they've handed them all off to Boston, and Boston is just licking their chops at how this team is going to plummet potentially in the future, and just handball them all these high picks. But at the same time, that being said, a couple of these contracts come off the book in the next few years, and then if Prokhorov stays around, they can just sort of reload and spend again, can't they?
Yeah, that's it. And I think you made a good point there. When this big trade happened, it was sort of like, Boston, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And Brooklyn, oh my God, they made the trade. And now, a year later, we're in the total opposite positions.
Flip the script.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, as I said, this team's just got to somehow prove something in this time while they've got this team, because there's still good players on the team. Like, they've got potential. Deron Williams is no spud. He's a good player.
Yeah.
And then they've got KG, experience, Brook Lopez if he gets fit. They haven't got a bad starting 5. It just depends how they don't run that deep. So these players have obviously got to do it while they're on the court.
I think, looking at what they did last year, there was a horrible start they got off to that really derailed their season. I think they went 3-10 through their first 13 games, and it took them until the 58th game of the season to hit 500 and sort of break even at 29-29. And then they went on to finish 44-38, as we've said. So once they sort of got it together, and Jason Kidd, who's gone now, but once Jason Kidd started to get it together, and he started playing a bit more small ball because Lopez went down with that foot injury, and once they figured out who they were, they started to play a bit better. So if they can do that sooner this year, they can definitely finish higher than where I've got them ranked. But you know, I'm with you. I think this team is just stagnant at the moment, and they're just going to sneak in and sort of be one and done.
Yeah, well, they've definitely got their work cut out in the East with the Cleveland team that's been put together, and obviously Miami is still pretty strong, and the Bulls, you can't really see them challenging any of those sides with this team unless they really pull it together. They all get fit and they start moulding and playing great basketball like they did towards the end of last season, but they need to do that from day one, because you generally can't win the championship from that bottom four from the top eight, because you're never the home team, like you've never got the home advantage. So they need to be, from game one, they need to be on.
That's it. I think we're looking at who they've brought in this season. They haven't made any major additions to the roster really, except for bringing Brook Lopez back. I think is something that's going to be really important. He played, I think it was 17 games. It was less than 20 last year, and that was a massive loss for them, because he is really one of their primary scorers they want to look to, and it gives them an inside-out scoring, because he's a 20 plus point per game scorer. He's a decent rim protector.
He was an all-star, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's all-star year before. He gets slammed on being a poor rebounder, but when you look at who he's played with guys like Reggie Evans, Kevin Garnett, even big bodies like Andre Blatch, like guys that really go after it on the boards. So there's not as many boards to bring down. So you slam him for being a poor rebounder, but they just need a scorer, don't they?
Yeah, that's it. And they've got obviously a lot of options. It's like a lot of teams in the NBA this year are pretty unpredictable, and Brooklyn are another one. It just depends who's going to step up at what time, and if anyone will step up. That's the worry you have. Like even Deron Williams last year, he didn't really have the season that people were probably expecting of that team. You would have thought he would have had a lot more assists with the players he had in the squad. So I think Brook Lopez is one that if he gets fit, he definitely needs to try and put this team on his shoulders as such, and try and do the best that he can to get this team going, because they have the talent. It just depends whether they can put it together.
Yeah, definitely. I'm worried about Brook Lopez's foot a little bit though, because once you see big guys start to have foot troubles, that sort of can be the downhill of their career, because they're putting so much weight onto such an important part of the body. Once you start getting foot problems, you get leg problems, back problems. It's sort of that's the foundation of your structure, and as that sort of wears out with such a big body, that can be a real issue. But he's come back, and like you said, he was all-star the year before, which was the year after he had another stress fracture in his foot. So he's bounced back before, and adding Lionel Hollins, who we know from Memphis has worked really well with big guys. So hopefully Hollins can get him and Garnett, and maybe Andre Blatch if he comes back, who we have to talk about in a sec. Once he comes back, Lionel Hollins can get those big guys working together, hopefully.
Well, I think that's probably the biggest plus on that added list is probably Lionel Hollins. Him in for Jason Kidd is probably only going to be positive. Like, he seems really like team focused. Jason Kidd just came out of the game, and probably his ego was probably ahead of the team more than anything. So I think this helps.
If anything, Lionel Hollins joining the team makes Brooklyn infinitely more likeable.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to put up with Jason Kidd spilling Diet Cokes on the sidelines to get timeouts and stuff. But they lost a couple crucial players as well. Sean Livingston, who I'm so happy to see him finally get a big payday, because he had that like horrific knee injury earlier in his career, and he's been bouncing around. Now he's got money, he's heading to Golden State.
I've actually got with Sean Livingston, I actually saw Sean Livingston's first ever game of NBA.
Oh, really?
It's the only NBA game I've ever been to for the Clippers, and that I remember being in that arena and being the first game of the season. Everyone was excited about this kid. Yeah. So for him to get back from what he's been through and playing pretty decent ball, hopefully he gets even better, because to have that for me, like to be able to say I saw this guy's first game, I want him to play well, because I remember what the hype was around this guy. Yeah,
well, the hype, he came into the league with hype bigger than his afro, so it's great to see him get paid, but that's going to be a big loss for the Nets. I mean, they brought in Jarrett Jack, who a couple of years ago in Golden State, funnily enough, had a really great season playing along Steph Curry. So if he can play that role as a two-headed point guard attack with Deron Williams, sort of ease the pressure on Williams' ball carrying and everything. I think that could be a sneaky big pickup. But
I've always liked Jarrett Jack. He's definitely got that clutch factor. We've seen that before, and he's definitely a good addition. Yeah,
sometimes he thinks he's got too much clutch factor, which is probably a little bit of a detriment.
Who
to
doesn't
him,
on this team, I guess.
That's it. They lost Paul Pierce though, who's a massive loss. He's heading to Washington, but we're going to need. Hopefully Lopez can step in and be a scorer, and then they'll. I don't know. It's hard to say whether they've replaced Pierce or not because they haven't really added many wings with his talent level. They're going to have to do it by committee, I think.
Yeah.
And sort of everyone sort of pitch in and help bridge that gap that he's left behind him. But Marcus Thornton, they lost him. He's a great scorer, but he didn't really add too much to the team. I want to talk about one of the rookies they've added in Bojan Bogdanovic, who's been playing over in FIBA at the moment and been playing really well. He's a guy I think can step up and add a bit of scoring on the wings there.
Yeah, definitely. If he can do what he's been doing over there, it's only going to help this team with the loss of Paul Pierce. So hopefully they can find that scoring. Like you said, they're going to have to all pinch hit a bit. But a lot of teams do that now with the wing players, because if you have other good players in other areas, it's probably the best spot to have a pinch hitter in. So
one guy that I don't have on the list here just yet because he hasn't officially re-signed, he's a free agent at the moment, is Andre Blatch, who I think hands down you can't deny that he has been by far the absolute most entertaining player at the World Cup he naturalised for the Philippines and was just doing a little bit of everything for them over there, wasn't he? I mean, he was carrying the ball, he was going coast to coast, pull-up threes, making behind the back passes, and just he is one of those guys who I've said before, I love gunners, I love guys that don't care about team basketball, as bad as that sounds, for an entertainment factor. And I really want to see Andre Blatch back in the league, just to see him doing stupid stuff again. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I think there's a reason he naturalised to the Philippines, because they don't really have much else, so he could go and be that gunner on that team, because there's no expectations there. So he could basically go there and do what he wanted. And if Brooklyn start going downhill, we'll probably see that as an opportunity again, just to go earn a pay packet or something and do what he wants.
I think he's definitely earned a pay packet for the way he's been playing. Like he played really well. Like at times it did look like he was forcing it a little bit, but he didn't have much help to go to. And it's not what you really want for a successful NBA team, but I think he could really be a key addition to Brooklyn if they bring him back. He might even still sign for a relatively small amount because he's sort of still giving the middle finger to the Wizards for waiving him because he got amnestied, and the Wizards technically have to still pay his salary. So you could get him on the cheap, and cheap is what Brooklyn needs. So cheap scoring and infinite amount of fun if you sign him. But looking at the guys who are going to play the bulk of the minutes, we've touched on a couple already. But Deron Williams, Joe Johnson, Andre Kirilenko I've slotted in there. I think now that Pierce is gone, we haven't talked about him yet, he's going to have to really step up. He's a guy that they brought in to be a big-time player, struggled with injuries last year. Lopez and Garnett. For you, who's the most important out of those five?
I'd probably say Deron Williams. He's easily probably got the most talent out of those five in terms of age and experience. So I think he needs to get fit and then take this team on and carry this team, because last year there was so much weight put on his shoulders to be the guy, and everyone thought this guy's only going to improve with these players coming in, and it didn't really happen. I think he missed a bit of the season as well, which put him back a bit. So hopefully he can stay fit, just take this on and try and build this team, because everyone's kind of writing them off at this point, and he's the one guy that I can see stepping up and putting up big numbers.
Yeah, we've stolen my thunder a little bit because I want to talk about Deron Williams in a second, but I think for me it's a cross between Brook Lopez and Joe Johnson, because we sort of know what we're going to get from Garnett now. He's probably not going to play more than 20 minutes a game. He's going to miss a lot of games because he is getting up there in age. I think he's played the most minutes of any player in the league at the moment.
Yep.
I think he's drafted in '94, so it's a while back there. Came straight out of high school. But Joe Johnson was just killer last season.
Yeah.
He really stepped it up. He was the reason they beat the Raptors in the playoffs, because they just couldn't control that big body of his.
Yeah.
And he really stepped it up after the All-Star break. the team, that's really when Brooklyn bounced back and started playing well again. I'm trying to find the points he put up here, but it was more than 20 points a game. He shot really well, especially in the playoffs. And he's the guy who has that killer instinct, can ice a game. He killed my Suns one game with he went coast to coast, awesome. Flipped up a floater, nothing but net. And he's the guy that they can really count on in late game situations.
Yeah, it's with Joe Johnson, when he gets the ball, you're like, I reckon he gets in zones where you know he's going to hit the shot. He just gets into this place where he is unstoppable sometimes. But then there's other times where he can't hit a shot. But in late game situations, that's the guy they want the ball in his hands because he is so clutch. I reckon I've always said he's probably the most clutch in the NBA because when he gets the ball in his hands, your heart just stops for the other team because he's probably going to hit a shot that's going to sink you. Yeah,
well, that's it. I've found it here now. In the playoffs, he hit 21 points a game, 53% from the field, 41 from the floor, from beyond the arc. So through 12 games in the playoffs, he absolutely stepped it up and smashed it. He had a nickname while he was at Atlanta. He was ISO Joe because they passed it to him. He played a lot of isolation ball and could score in one-on-one situations. Some call him Joe Cool because he's really cool in late game situations. But I like Kevin Garnett last year. They called him Joe Jesus because sometimes he's not always there when you want him, but he's always there when you need him. So Joe Jesus next season I think can be a really key contributor.
Definitely.
And Brook Lopez I've talked about. They just need him to be healthy and be back to that scorer and add another dimension to their offense. But
well, he's an all-star, so he's key to their success.
And Joe Johnson, all-star last season. I think it was his 7th. No one thought he deserved it, but you saw in the playoffs at the end of the game, the coaches got it right. He was someone that was up there as one of the best shooting guards in the league. Going back to what you said, was Deron Williams. He's my key contributor for the rest of the team. I need to see a great season out of Deron Williams for this team to do anything. There was a time when between him and Chris Paul, there was a genuine debate as to who was the best point guard in the league, and he has just fallen off since then. I think if we look it up here, he's 29 now, so he's getting to that point where it's no longer like, I give him a few more years, he'll get back to it. He has to prove it, and he has to prove it now. That he is once again a stud. Last All-Star game was in the 2011-12 season, so it's been a while. 14 points, 6 assists. He's got $63 million left on his contract. He's a big money signee that they brought in. He was pretty good. He had a 57-point game the first year there, and he was still a really good scorer. He's a big guard, has that killer crossover when it's there, but he's had ankle issues, and that's really stunted his production, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely, and fitness is the key for this guy. And I think the assists there, per game, Chris Paul's upwards of 10.
He led the league last year.
Yeah, and if you want to be putting comparisons in with Deron and Chris, he has to be putting up bigger numbers in that area, especially with the team he's got around him, because he's got players who could score around him. He can pass it to anyone on the floor, whatever position he gets into, he's got scorers around him, so he needs to get those numbers up. If he can get the points up as well, this team, as I said before, can beat anything if he carries them on his shoulders. Last All-Star 2011-12 isn't good enough. He should be almost an automatic selection each year. And I think, if he can get back to his best form, you look at this team, they've got 4 All-Stars in their starting lineup. So we've been writing them off a bit, but they're proven performers if they can all get back to their best. Obviously Kevin Garnett's a bit older, and they're all getting a bit old, but basketball's a sport, like Jordan says, the last thing that ever goes is your shot. So there's no excuses for age. If you're going to play in the league, you've got to be try and be the best you can be.
And that's it. I'm not looking for an all-star season from Deron Williams this year. I'm not looking for him to be a 20-10 guy. I just want him to be, get him upwards of 17, 18 points and push those assists to about 7 or 8. If he can give me 18 and 8, and even if he misses the all-star game, that's just adds another dimension to this team. I keep talking about how they just need to keep adding pieces to get better, and we've seen what he can do, we've seen what he hasn't done lately. I want to see more. He's the key for me. But before we get too bogged down on that, got to move to Believe the Hypothetical. Shout out to the boys at the Believe the Hype NBA podcast. check out their social media stuff. Everything's going to be on the screen right now. Todd, their prediction is, despite the snazzy marketing campaign that went along with the move to Brooklyn from New Jersey, the Nets go back to being a team that no one cares about.
No one? Bit harsh. Probably a few people still do, but yeah, they definitely haven't got the same hype that they did have around them, especially now that Jay-Z's gone. I know a lot of people loved that aspect of the Nets, and now that he's become a player manager, changes everything because he's not there anymore. And yeah, the Nets, you just want them to be a good team. Like Brooklyn, it just sounds so good. Like I can just picture a championship in Brooklyn. It would just be like incredible. But yeah, it's disappointing that they didn't do as well as they did. Could have.
No, I am with this 100%, guys. I think the excitement and the hype that was around the team when they moved to Brooklyn is just completely gone. You know, there's no more Jay-Z. When they first got there, the Battle of the Borough, I think they were calling it, between New York and the Nets. Those games were awesome. You know, the team was pushing for top spots in the East. They've had all these big money moves. They've got this ridiculous big money roster. I think people are just getting sick of it now, you know. We've seen that they've paid a lot of money, but we haven't seen that they've done anything with it.
No.
And, you know, they're not going to excite too many teams this year because they're getting to be older, they're getting to be slower. Their stars aren't performing. You know, their superstars don't catch the eye like some of the other teams. So, I'm with this. I think there's going to be a couple people that care about this team. You know, they are going to make the playoffs, but definitely I agree that the hype is not there like it was when they brought them over to Brooklyn. Yeah,
I've got a message for Brooklyn. Let's forget about marketing now. Let's play basketball.
Yeah, good point.
It's about the game on the court. We want you to be a good team. Like, I would love to see Brooklyn at the top eventually. So if it's not this year, if it doesn't go right, let's bring youth into this team and make it exciting again.
Yeah, I think they're really angling for that Kevin Durant signing in 2016. They've keyed their cap so they get heaps of space come there, but I think that's a shot in the dark. That's probably going to hit the point. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Let's have less marketing, less new jerseys, and, you know, maybe we could bring Jay-Z back courtside a couple of times. I'd love to see Jay-Z courtside, but Brooklyn Nets, they're not moving the needle much for me this year.
No.
All right, we've got to wrap it up here though. 30 seconds on the clock. What's your prediction for the Nets this year?
I think Brooklyn will play playoffs, but it depends on their whole roster. Their whole roster has question marks over them. Like, Deron, are you going to step up this year? Brook Lopez, is he going to be fit? Joe Johnson had a great season last year, but you never know what he's going to do. So it's just question mark, question mark, question mark. You don't know what you're going to get from Brooklyn, but I think they'll play playoffs. And their ceiling's still pretty high, but they just didn't reach it last year, and you can't categorically say that they're going to reach it this year. So yeah, I think they're going to play playoffs, but yeah, there's just a massive question mark.
I think that Brooklyn should be thanking the geographical gods and just be absolutely thankful that they are in the Eastern Conference, because they're going to squeak into the 8th seed and get swept in the first round. If they're in the West, they wouldn't make it. I think, you know, they're going to be a lot more disappointing than they were last year, and it's going to they're going to bounce back because they have Prokhorov. If he stays around and they can just pay people to come again, they're going to bounce back up. But this year is not going to be a great year. I think next year they're probably going to miss out altogether because I reckon Garnett will retire. But yeah, Brooklyn, 8th seed, first round. See you later. But, you know, that's all we got time for. Thanks for joining us on the season previews here at Fiasco Sports. I'm Matt Sampson. Todd Lewis has been nice enough to come in. We're here at Sporties. Check them out. Thanks again to the Believe the Hype guys. All the info is going to be in the description. Get around it. We'll see you next time.